Welcome to Watch Mojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 20 movie vampires.
Because I lived for it.
For this list, we're looking at the best bloodsuckers the silver screen has to offer. So, as fantastically freaky as Kurt Barlow is in 1979's Salem's Lot, that's technically a miniseries and thus won't be included. However, we are not above including vampire-adjacent characters, and multiple versions of the same character are okay as long as they're distinct. Who's your favorite long-toothed ghoul? Number 20. Max Schreck, Shadow of the Vampire. We'll be getting a little meta with our first entry, detailing a fictionalized account into the filming of the 1922 horror movie Nosferatu. More on that one later. Shadow of the Vampire shines a spotlight on creature actor Max Schreck, whose uncanny presence on set leads the crew to believe he might actually be a vampire.
This is Max Schreck, who will be portraying our vampire Count Orlok. As you no doubt have heard, Max's methods are somewhat unconventional, but I am sure you will come to respect his artistry in this matter.
Willem Dafoe is unrecognizable as Schreck, whose method acting style could even make any sane person think twice as to the existence of vampires.
What is the matter with you?
He's a Stanislavski lunatic. That is what is the matter with
I
him.
have contracted you in secrecy and at great expense. You will not damage this production.
Though the film has been somewhat lost to time, it still makes for a fascinating watch as it blends mystical horror with the real world. Number 19. Miriam Blaylock, The Hunger. There are few characters that personify the eroticism of vampires quite like Miriam Blaylock.
Are you making a pass at me, Mrs. Blaylock? Miriam. Miriam? Not that I'm aware of, Sarah.
Thousands of years old, Miriam has gone through a plethora of vampiric companions, only to eventually watch them all wither away into a permanent state of living death. After her latest partner John goes through the same process, Miriam is quick to replace him with scientist Sarah, whose transformation doesn't go nearly as smoothly.
Sarah, what have you done to me? There's some alien strain consuming my blood. That's right. I know that's right. What I want to know is, what is it? Why have you done it?
Played by French actor Catherine Deneuve, Miriam is imbued with a kind of mystical sensuality with a malevolent, self-serving undercurrent. That said, we're not sure we could resist her charms either. Number 18. Peter Lowe, Vampire's Kiss. Is this character a vampire? Maybe not, but he's too richly idiosyncratic for us not to include. New York yuppie Peter Lowe gets a bloody taste of the lifestyle after a supposed one-night stand with a vampire leads to him being bitten.
Yes.
Believing himself to be in the midst of becoming, Lowe plays the part emphatically, wearing plastic vampire teeth, sunglasses during the day, and prowling nightclubs for his next victim. Thanks to the completely batty performance by Nicolas Cage, Vampire's Kiss remains a darkly satirical take on the vampire archetype, as Lowe's ostensible transformation casts him further and further into madness. Number 17. Clara Webb, Byzantium. Some people are just born to play vampires, and Gemma Arterton is one such person. In Byzantium, Arterton plays Clara, a former sex worker who, after a tragic series of events, saves the lives of herself and her daughter Eleanor by crossing over to the other side.
Eleanor wrote her life story, and she's quite insistent that it's true. I don't expect you to be flattered by this, but in it she describes you as a superiant, which I believe is a sort of vampire.
However, her formal lifestyle puts her at odds with an elder sect of vampires, and Clara's steely resolve remains one of the few things saving her and Eleanor from extermination.
Don't you lie about me all the time. If you tell him, I will kill him. Don't you sometimes crave to tell the truth? There is a code that we survive by, Eleanor. Keep it.
As this will be just one of many vampires from Neil Jordan movies on this list, it would appear that the director just gets the classic creatures. Number 16. Mavis, the Hotel Transylvania franchise. Now we transition to a more family-friendly vampire. While there are loads of classic film monsters taking up residency at the titular getaway, the one that stands out is an original character in Mavis, the daughter of Count Dracula.
Hey, look at this!
Hey guys!
You excited about tomorrow?
Not as excited as I am right now. You're not gonna believe this, but Dad is letting me go out on my own to see a human villain.
What?
Raised to believe that humans are the real monsters, Mavis lives a sheltered life at the hotel until a human named Johnny stumbles through the doors. The two immediately zing, and their love breaks down barriers as they even start a family in later films.
Little Dennis is a year old now.
Wow!
Voiced by Selena Gomez, Mavis represents the wide-eyed optimism of the incoming generation and serves as a productive role model to young viewers. Number 15, Severin, Near Dark. The late Bill Paxton had the unparalleled ability to make even the smallest character more interesting than they were.
It's finger licking good.
Fortunately, though, he already had a great foundation to work with portraying Severin in Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark. Just one of multiple vagabond vampires roaming the countryside in search of blood, Severin stands out as the completely unhinged lunatic of the group, always eager to flex his confidence and abilities. While Jesse, the leader of the group, is similarly memorable, being played by horror icon Lance Henriksen.
And I just knew you were trouble.
You were right.
It's Severin that has us coming back to this cult classic. Also, best vampire name ever? Number 14, Adam and Eve, Only Lovers Left Alive. Though it's never confirmed whether the vampires are the biblical Adam and Eve, it's possibilities such as these that make Jim Jarmusch's Only Lovers Left Alive so thematically interpretive and enticing.
Come on, tell me, what was she like?
She was delicious.
I'll bet she was.
Centuries old, Adam and Eve have been wildly influential culturally, but find themselves in an existential malaise as they spend their days in Detroit and Tangier, respectively. Upon reuniting, the immortal lovers go through a mid-existence crisis of sorts. Actors Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton do tremendous jobs keeping audience investment against such a morose tone. For anyone fascinated by the vampire psyche, this is a must-watch. Number 13, Viago, Vladislav and Deacon, What We Do in the Shadows. While most entries on this list stem from the horror genre, What We Do in the Shadows applies the mockumentary format to the undead creatures. And the results couldn't be more hilarious. All vampires of varying ages, Viago, Vladislav, and Deacon are roommates, but instead of a castle, they share a flat in New Zealand.
We're not just pointing the finger at you, Deacon. You're a cool guy, but you're not pulling your weight in the flat.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that I'm cool.
No, that's not the point, though.
Yeah,
no, I know.
Not a
I know.
flat meeting about how cool you are.
As expected, their differing personalities make for strange bedfellows, but stranger still thanks to their vampiric tendencies. Played by Taika Waititi, Jermaine Clement, and Jonathan Bruff, the three are easily the funniest vampires we can think of, as the movie became a cult favorite and launched an FX series of the same name, on which the characters cameoed.
Don't take offense, but you don't seem like someone who would be capable of killing a vampire.
But I did it.
I hard to believe.
Well, I did.
From maybe a tougher-looking guy, I'd believe it. But...
Number 12, David, The Lost Boys. As underseen as Near Dark was, when it came to vampire movies, 1987 belonged to the Lost Boys. Upon moving to a new town, teenager Michael is integrated into a local biker gang, led by the ever-cool and enigmatic David.
How are those maggots? Maggots, Michael. You're eating maggots. How do they taste?
Turns out, though, the gang isn't cool because they ride motorcycles, but rather because of their vampiric nature. Kiefer Sutherland is the epitome of roguish as David, perfectly straddling the line between danger and intrigue.
Michael, you're one of us! Let go! Up to what? You are one of us, Michael!
Though David may not be as in control as he appears, His aesthetic and outward temperament have made him iconic, and the first thing you think of when the 80s classic comes to mind. Number 11. Santanico Pandemonium, From Dusk Till Dawn. Here's a vampire who doesn't have a whole lot of screen time, but makes a big impression nonetheless. Just one of many vampires infesting a desert strip club, Santanico Pandemonium, played by the terrific Salma Hayek, creates what has to be one of the sexiest scenes in all of film.
Strolling in the night.
Clad in an albino python and little else, Santanico delivers a striptease that's liable to make anyone hot under the collar. Granted, she and the other bar employees subsequently hulking out into terrifying vampires might kill the mood, but really that only adds to her mystique. Number 10. Lestat de Lioncourt, Interview with the Vampire. The original Neil Jordan vampire movie, Interview with the Vampire recontextualized the vampire experience for a new wave of moviegoers.
What if I could give it back to you? Pluck out the pain and give you another life. One you could never imagine.
Keeping up the tradition of the deceptively beautiful vampire, Lestat proves to be an appropriate yet uncommon role for Tom Cruise, who emphasizes the anti in the anti-hero paradigm in this one. He's extremely misanthropic, especially in comparison to his newly turned companion Louis, against whom much of the film's conflict generates.
No one could refuse me. Not even you, Louis.
I tried.
Yes, you tried.
While his portrayal here may not be as layered as his counterpart in the Anne Rice book series, compounding factors of his demeanor and Cruise's star power have made Lestat an iconic movie vampire. Number 9. Marlowe, 30 Days of Night. For the most part, the characters on this list are fully formed people with significant development. Marlowe from 30 Days of Night, however, fulfills the monstrous qualities of what a vampire is classically known to be, and that's it. The leader of the pack, Marlowe and his followers descend upon an Alaskan town when it's undergoing the titular polar event, using the month-long cover of darkness to gorge upon the townsfolk. While every vampire is nightmare-inducing, Marlowe is especially so. His chilling presence accentuated by his pitch-black eyes and blood-stained teeth. In a movie that's not totally on the same level, Danny Huston creates a memorable villain in a career full of them. Number 8. Jerry Dandridge, Fright Night. Jerry Dandridge from Fright Night is another example of a sexy vampire, but this time in a more hypnotically gothic kind of way. When horror-obsessed teenager Charlie Brewster correctly presumes his new neighbor Jerry is a murderous vampire, things get pretty dicey pretty quickly.
Oh, Charlie, don't be rude. Shake hands.
Jerry resorts to a slew of intimidation tactics to get Charlie to back off. He even goes after Charlie's girlfriend Amy because she resembles a past lover of his. You know, that old vampire thing. Still, Fright Night manages to feel widely accessible and fresh with its approach. And a lot of that is due to the delectably dastardly performance from Chris Sarandon as Jerry.
Of course, I could give you something I don't have. A choice. Forget about me, Charlie. Forget about me, and I'll forget about you. What do you say, Charlie?
Number 7. Claudia, Interview with the Vampire. As fascinating a character as Lestat is in the novel series, the most dynamic character in the 1994 film has to be Kirsten Dunst's Claudia. After the vampire Louis inadvertently feeds on the young girl Claudia in an act of starvation, Lestat turns her to keep his companion from leaving him.
You both did it.
I took your life. He gave you another one.
And here it is. And I hate you both.
Their toxic relationship extends to the three of them as they raise Claudia as their own. 30 years pass, and Claudia's mind matures normally, but her body remains stunted as that of a child's. This results in some severe psychological issues, as Claudia makes known her disdain towards them for trapping her in such a prepubescent state.
I haven't tears enough for what you've done to me. You give her to me, Louis! Do this before you leave me! I love you still.
It is tragic storytelling, but one rich in thematic depth. Number 6. Ellie, Let the Right One In. Hailing from Sweden, Let the Right One In is a darkly compelling story of friendship and dependence. Lena Leanderson plays Ellie, another young-looking vampire who soon finds herself without a caretaker.
Förlåt.
Forced to hunt for herself, the walls start closing in on her secret. But she finds solace in befriending a 12-year-old boy named Oscar. Their affection for each other is tenderly sweet, but the more they help each other with their problems, the more we quietly question the relationship between love and symbiosis. The character of Ellie is so nuanced, in fact, that her American counterpart Abby in the remake Let Me In is equally intriguing.
Just so you know, I can't be your friend. Why not? That's just the way it is.
Number 5. Count Dracula, Vlad the Impaler, Bram Stoker's Dracula. We knew we'd be seeing good old Drax somewhere in the top 5, and you know what? We may not even be done with him after this.
I am Dracula. And I bid you welcome, Mr. Harcourt, to my house. Come in.
A more faithful adaptation of Bram Stoker's original novel, this Dracula sees Gary Oldman portray the titular villain, though you might not know it based on some of his earlier interactions. Indeed, playing a decrepit version of the Count, along with his alluring youthful visage and Vlad the Impaler, his original form, Oldman delivers a trifecta of powerhouse performances, each of them convincing and layered.
Do not put your faith in such trinkets of deceit. We are in Transylvania, and Transylvania is not England.
While the movie on the whole wasn't quite as solid, one cannot complain with a villainous showing of this caliber. Number 4. Blade, the Blade franchise. Who said vampires and superheroes don't mix? Before the long-running franchises and cinematic universes of today, the Blade movies showed what comic book adaptations could look like for the new millennium.
Wait a minute. You use me as bait?
Get over it.
Is all that necessary?
And a lot of its success stems from its kick-ass title character. A half-vampire daywalker, Eric Brooks, aka Blade, uses his otherworldly strengths to track and exterminate his underworld brethren. And since he's played by Wesley Snipes, he does so in the most badass way possible with plenty of hilarious one-liners.
Now here I am. Ooh, so exciting, isn't it?
Though the quality of the trilogy fluctuated, the one constant was Blade himself, making any adventure of his eminently watchable. Number 3. Count Dracula, the Hammer Dracula franchise. Obviously, there's something about the character of Dracula that has cinema returning to him time and time again. But don't let that detract from the slew of fabulous performances we've gotten courtesy of him. And Christopher Lee's is no exception. With Lee starring in a whopping 7 films as the Prince of Darkness, his version is familiar, yet strikingly terrifying, unafraid to bring the intensity and savagery that comes with being an undead beast. While the later sequels never entirely lived up to the first, it cannot be denied that this version of Dracula ushered in a new era of monster movies, and by and large made the villains scary again. Number 2. Count Orlok, Nosferatu. Don't let the title fool you. This is the Dracula story through and through. However, the excellent creature design and chilling theatrics put it in a league all its own. Played by Max Schreck, Remember him? Count Orlok is apt to give you nightmares roughly a century since his debut, but with his elongated features and deadened facial expressions. Not only that, but Orlok is a master in the art of tension, making big impacts with subtle gestures, whether he be staring at you through a window or having his shadow creep up a staircase. If the silent treatment is a hindrance for you, however, Klaus Kinski's talkie portrayal in Nosferatu the Vampire will similarly give you goosebumps.
Huge in caves, tombs, coffins filled with the unblessed soil of cemetery.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Edward Cullen, The Twilight Saga. Just kidding. We're sure Sparklepuss here is on some other best vampire lists, but not this one. Number 1. Count Dracula. Dracula. After all these years, this version of Dracula is still what people think of when they think of the quintessential vampire, and for good reason. Whether the movie is still a horror classic, a lot of that rides on the indomitable performance from Bela Lugosi as the eponymous villain.
I am Dracula.
He's suave, seductive, confident, and yet utterly unsettling, confirming our fears when he begins enacting his dastardly deeds against the protagonists. While this Dracula wouldn't exist without the original novel, or even arguably the first Nosferatu, Lugosi and company certainly ensured that the vampire archetype would persist for generations to come.
Indeed.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.